It would certainly take a lot of work, a lot of examples to fully illustrate inductive arguments and deductive argument. So I highly recommend you do additional readings to look at more examples. But these basic examples here, if you repeat this video a couple of times, should lock in these ideas to you, okay? Identify this argument, mean distinguish this argument from deductive or inductive argument. So you look at first, when looking at an argument, you want to find a word of inference. In this case, is therefore, all right? So Tim appreciated language, that conclusion. And when you look up here, you see there's no sequencing of information. You're making a general claim about all poets and another claim. That first claim here is a theoretical statement. There's no way to know, in fact, this to be true because all means all poets in the past, all in the present, and all in the future. And there's no way you can all these people appreciate language unless you're saying people are born appreciating language, and which would be false. You don't know that. Tim is a poet, all right? That is a factual statement. So you have a theoretical statement and a factual statement. When you put these together, it forces the necessary truth of that conclusion. That's not negotiable. That is not negotiable at all. If it was not all, if you said some poets appreciate language, then Tim as a poet would not force that conclusion. Tim might appreciate language, but unless you give us more data to show that Tim is in a group of some, we wouldn't know that. But as it stands right now, this argument is deductive. If the first two are true, the conclusion is necessarily true. In this one, we have the same phenomena, but now we have what is known as a disjunctive argument, that or statement, okay? He is A or B. Why? In the real world, we know some police officers can be crooked, okay? So some police officers can be dealing in guns on the side. And then on the other side, you may have a gun dealer who's just like a cop. But then again, you must also have a police officer who has the legal license to have a gun dealership, because this doesn't say gun dealer here is illegal. So that's an open question. But when you say one or another, you're making a theoretical claim about reality, which is not, that's why you say that. And the next statement, you have a factual statement, okay? Well, if this statement is true, this negation is true, he is not a police officer. Well, up there, this has to be false. We have to conclude he's a gun dealer. If these two sentences above are true, the conclusion is true with necessity, not negotiable. Notice how the conclusion comes down like a hammer, not maybe, not might, it's definite. The conclusion is always coming down in deduction with necessary force. How about this one here? Well, you make another theoretical claim. Other people get A in calculus. They don't get to go to Hawaii. Why Kelly can't get to go to Hawaii? All right? That's a theoretical claim. But what you are saying, though, if she gets an A in calculus, she must go to Hawaii. If she gets an A and doesn't go, that statement is false. So if we assume that statement is true, she has to go. So let's assume that statement to be true because we're checking for validity here. Kelly did not go to Hawaii. Whoa. Then for this whole statement to be true, she didn't get an A in calculus. This statement is deductive and valid. But this is a complicated question, a complicated argument, I would say. And you may have to do more research to understand its full validity, but you can definitely see it is not inductive. There is no sequencing of information. One declared statement to be true, another declared statement to be true. When their meanings combine, you get an answer that's implied to be true. That is an attempt to produce a deductive argument. It is not in any way inductive. Now, this one seemed like jibber-jaw, okay? You're all over the place. But still, if you just assume that it's true, just looking for validity, looking away from reality, all right? If you assume all computer technicians are tall, that's a weird world to live in. All tall people are basketball players. Wait a second here. That first sentence is a small circle of computer technicians who are tall. Then it says all tall people, okay, are basketball players. So there's the second statement is a bigger circle around a smaller circle, okay? So I've enclosed the first sentence by the second sentence. Then I could say this, the conclusion with absolute certainty, right? All computer technicians are basketball players because the circle of basketball players is bigger than and surround the circle of computer technicians. This argument in front of you is deductive and valid. Obviously, this is an unsound argument. Unsound means it's a bad argument. If you evaluate those two statements in the real world, the first one and the second statement in the real world, you'll discover them to be false. So this statement is a bad argument, but it is still valid. Validity doesn't require truth, but the assumption of truth. When I assume those statements are true, I can see those statements are false in the world. Okay, boom. So the argument is going to be a bad argument, unsound. But if I pretend that they're true together, I see it's a deductively valid argument, valid but unsound, valid but unsound. And this leads me to my last conclusion. When you're evaluating deductive arguments, there's two things you're going to look for, okay? You're going to look for the truth of the premises, right? But to check in the real sense of evaluating. But when you're looking at the validity, you don't need the real world. In any reasoning, you don't need the real world. In induction, you don't need the real world. You assume, you pretend the statements are true and see if the conclusion follows. And in deductive argument, the conclusion must follow with necessity. Not maybe, not might, but with necessity. And it must be an entailed truth. Okay. In the previous argument, that argument was unsound because in the real world, the statement was false, but it was valid. Okay. It was false. To be a sound argument, you need to have the statement to be true in the domain of this discourse. And at the same time, the argument is still valid.